go-to progressive criticisms of Doug Ford is that he prioritizes developers' interests over the Ontario public's interests. This has been a reoccurring theme throughout his time in provincial politics, with questions about his use of minister zoning orders, his pandemic restrictions that applied to almost everyone except construction sites, his meddling in urban boundaries, and most recently, his plan to build Highway 413. Now, while the Liberals and NDP have been able to score some political points using this tactic in the past, this election is mostly falling flat. And this isn't for lack of trying. Andrea Horwath alleges Highway 413 will be little more than a gift to Ford's developer buddies. She even used her opening remarks in the last leadership debate to drive the point home. Stephen Del Duca also says the highway would only benefit wealthy developers and promises to end what he calls abused MZOs. In response, Ford has called both of them anti-development. Whether that's true or not, it smartly hones in on why these previously successful attacks are missing the mark with voters this time around. Housing is currently one of the biggest issues for Ontarians who watched the province's average sale price soar 44% within 2 years. The pain is no longer concentrated in urban centres either, but has spread through the suburbs to even remote small towns. If someone wasn't in the housing market prior to the pandemic, it's near impossible for them to enter it now, barring family help or a lottery-like financial windfall. The first-time homebuyer is an increasingly endangered species. While the problem is larger than any one factor, a big chunk of the blame can be placed on lack of supply. This is so obvious that every single party in the Ontario race promises to increase our housing supply, and fast. All of the parties also, at least partly, plan to do this by introducing zoning changes to expedite development. The only differences are what type of development and where it will be. When YIMBYism is the bipartisan movement of the moment, anything that can be perceived as NIMBYism is politically toxic. During a severe housing shortage, campaigning against developers and the Ford government's alleged ties to them comes across as at best uninspiring and at worst tone-deaf. At this point, much of the Ontario public doesn't particularly care if Ford in fact favors developer interests, as long as it helps housing get built ASAP. To them, the greater sin would be impeding development and prolonging the crisis. It's difficult to get precious about where development happens or who it comes from when so many Ontarians can barely afford to call a place home. Not recognizing this and shifting tactics accordingly is just another example of how the Liberals and NDP have failed to change with the times and emotionally connect with today's voters.